But Carol Pepper, can you join, introduce yourself, and tell us about what you're doing? And Gary Saka, you're supposed to be moderating this. So I know you guys have lots of material to cover, and Alan's here as well. He's got a lot of family office background. So if Carol, can you jump in?
Well,
Sure.
you know what? Before that, we did, for some reason, I'm not sure why. I just wrote a note to Carol there. For some reason, all the emails starting last night to the panelists just bounced back, and I can't think of any reason why,
They
because
found out
everything
about
else
you.
works. But we have lots of material,
We do.
and so that's fine. I actually had why don't I, before Carol jumps in, I'll tell you what we plan to do, and then I think we'll have plenty of time left over. Okay,
We've got
because
about 30 minutes.
okay, we got about 30 minutes. Okay, so first of all, I think I'll have Carol introduce herself after this. But this is the things that Carol and myself did talk last Friday. Okay, so the first thing we
Before we
wanted
get
to
started,
do.
I will tell you the poll that's going out by a smashing percent. The audience wants to know is what are the hot spots that family
Yeah.
offices are investing in.
So here's what we start. We start, sort of laying out the environment. The first thing is deal. Is that we talk about the deal pipeline and sourcing. How do we get the deals? And Carol's got lots of people that she's advisor to. So access the deal, own staff, outsourcing network. Then we'll go into types of deal, direct, private, syndicate, areas of focus, industry, geography, stage of investing from, seed, angel, and so on, role of alternative investments and hedges, Bitcoin, cannabis, art lending, whatever. That's where I think we'll cover the hot areas. And then she's got a lot of experience with negotiation strategy. So that's going to be a good deal. How you monitor, whether you take a board seat, advisory role, and management meetings. And then what does it take to be successful over a long time? So I think that will cover most of it, I would think. What do you think, Marty?
I think we have a slew of people that work for family offices that I've asked to join. So Alan Snyder and Fred Nazem have also joined. So we're going to do this like round table. Maybe we'll extend it 10 more minutes, but I want to use your structure and get everybody else to jump on board. So
okay, so I'll start off with asking the questions, and unfortunately, my opening remark, which was I think from the Lone Ranger, it's just you and me, Kimosabi. Carol, I guess we've got some joinees, so I guess it's not too bad. So Marty's drafted to me doing a lot of these. Most recently, I've been a board member of CAI International, a public transportation leasing company, but I've also been CFO or on the board of different broker dealers, semiconductors, biotech, and corporate venture capital. So go ahead, Carol. A couple minutes introduction for those who've already been on the prior panel. Obviously, you don't need an introduction, to do that. So go ahead. And then once we get the introductions of the people that didn't do it on the last panel, I'll go ahead and start the questions. Okay.
Okay, sounds great. Well, hi everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces. Hello, Fred. Hello, Alan. Hello, everybody. Hello, Alan Snyder. Nice to see everybody again. So my name is Carol Pepper, for those of you who don't know me. This is my 20th year in business, 2021. I've had my company for 20 years, and I do three things. I help people set up family offices all over the world. I consult to and improve the operations and the governance and all that good stuff of family offices. And then the bulk of my time is spent as the external chief investment officers to several large multi-billion-dollar single family offices. So that's what I spend the bulk of my time doing, looking at deals, setting asset allocation, and working with a few really wonderful global families. And then I also appear on CNBC, Bloomberg. I'll be on Bloomberg next week on the 19th, talking about the markets regularly. I have an education site called Family Office Bootcamp with online training for people for their kids. And then I wrote a book called The 7 Pearls of Financial Wisdom, A Woman's Guide to Enjoying Wealth and Power.
Carol, you should give us the exact time on that because I want to watch you on TV.
Oh, it's usually around 6 o'clock. They don't give me the call time until the day up, but it's.
But what is the program's name?
On Bloomberg Television.
No. Okay, Bloomberg Television. Okay,
yeah,
6 o'clock
TV,
Eastern time or Pacific time?
Asia. Sorry?
Pacific or
Oh, sorry, East Coast. Thank you. Yeah, 6
okay,
p.m. East
great.
Coast. So I'm in New York. I'm in the New Yorker here on the online. Thank you. Yeah, so 6
Okay.
p.m. is usually morning Asia. So usually it's with people in Asia. So it's really fun because we talk about what's already happening over on the other side of the world. And I
Okay.
think next week will be a very interesting week with everything going on in the capital. So yeah, and I always love being on panels for Marty, and I certainly think direct deals are an interesting area for us to tackle. You know, I know there's a lot of experienced people here, and I know there's a lot of people eager to pitch their deals to family offices as well. So we'll try to answer questions that you might have. So Gary, why don't you start the questions?
Okay, anybody else feel a need to reintroduce themselves? Okay, great. So the first question here comes off, and it's really the deal pipeline and sourcing. So where do you get your own deals? There's a lot of large guys that we've had. I think on one of the panels I chaired, there's cores and stuff, and they have their own people. But how do you get access to deals? Is some of that outsourced? And I know one of the lessons from one of the prior meetings I said chaired was networking, networking, networking. So this is just a big virtual networking, I suppose, in that sense, and would have been a lot greater if we would have been talking in the hallways. So Carol, why don't you go ahead, and I think I'll go in the order that I see them on the screen, okay? So since
Okay.
our own guys didn't show up, okay?
Okay,
A couple minutes on these, but if it's a little less, it will leave time for more questions too.
Yeah, well, I would agree with you. I think that the main way that I look at deals that I take seriously are deals that come from somebody that I know. Frankly, typically another family office that's already done some vetting, or a family I know that's spinning off a company or something like that. It's occasionally I'll get something from an investment bank where there's an inside deal that they're peeling something off of a fund or whatever. But quite frankly, you know, that's one of the reasons I last, you know, in 2019, I was probably on the road 300 days out of the year all over the world, meeting in person with people, because, you know, this has been the hardest part of COVID, not being able to sit down with people in Dubai or sit down with people in Mumbai or Singapore or Paris or London face to face. Because certainly when you go outside of the United States, my experience is most people really prefer face to face. They don't want to talk on the phone about anything substantive. They want to do it looking you in the eye, you know, without anything being recorded. So the US is a little more used to kind of going hello and jump into a pitch, but the rest of the world, not so much. So to me, you know, Alan and I, God, Alan, when did we meet? I want to say in the 90s. We've known each other since the 90s at least.
99 probably.
Okay, yeah, around, well, when I was at Credit Suisse before that, probably 96, 95. So I think 99, yeah. So we've, you know, 20 years we've known each other, even before I started my company, and we still know each other. So I always say your best asset is in business is your relationships, and keeping them, you know, keeping them cordial and respectful and contact. I mean, we could still find each other, which is pretty amazing after all that time. So, and I know if I need a certain thing, I would call Alan and ask him, and he would tell me an honest answer. So I think that's number one. Same for you, Fred, over there. I see you smiling. So, so yeah, you know, I think that's number one is relationships. And it's hard for new people to break in. So one of the reasons I work with families that don't have those relationships, let's say they've had their head down, they've been building a certain company, and all of a sudden they have a liquidity event, they have hundreds of millions of dollars, and they don't know how to get into this network. So for those people who don't have that 20-year network, I say, you know, hire some great, well-respected people that have good networks to bring you into the family, and then just go out and start, you know, coming out of your closet and meeting people at the SAFE conferences, particularly the other family offices, and that's how you'll start to build a network.
But everything's shut off. Everything's been shut off now since March. I think the cybersecurity conference was the last one in March, and just so happened in June, one of the public companies I'm on, you know, decided to replace its CEO. They hired an executive search firm, and I said, guys, let's just not even start this until we get the whole lockdown over with. And you know, we're in the San Francisco Bay Area, so everybody said, no, we can do it. We can do it. We can do it. We even wrote a case study to see how people reacted. You know, the people got to talk for like 3 hours on how they'd handle it. And finally, I don't want to say everybody else agreed with me, that everybody reached the same conclusion I had reached 6 months earlier, and that we're going to postpone it until we can meet the people face to face, you know, in like probably when all the boards are ready, getting together for a meeting, and, you know, go to a dinner and meet the staff and stuff. So maybe as people make some comments on this, they can just quickly go through that too. Okay.
Mhm.
How do you meet people? How do you get to know people that you don't know face to face already?
Mm.
Okay, who's next? Alan, do you want to give a quick comment on that?
Sure. Hey, Alan Reed. Just a quick background. I was a partner of Gordon Geddes for 15, 18 years, ran an asset management business for them. Before that was at Morgan Stanley. Then also served on the ICI Board of Governors working group at the Fed. Let's see. So in this space, I think that one of the challenges is just like what Carol was talking about, is it's all about access. And, you know, I'm reminded, there was a Swiss friend of mine ran a large Swiss family office. He had run trading, I think, at UBS for years. And as soon as he became part of the family office, he felt like he had no access. You know, in other words, he all of a sudden was solo. You know, it was a big family office, but so he would comes twice a year to the West Coast to just get access to tech. And I think tech is probably one of the unique areas, and I think it's going to be changing as we see this exodus from California to Texas and Florida and other states. But that's an interesting animal. I do know that, you know, families and more, especially if you think about first gens and the current technology folks, a lot of them would prefer to invest with one another. You know, they want to invest with somebody who's like them. They don't see a need for Wall Street, and they certainly don't like paying performance fees. So they like being GP. I mean, they like being partner. And I'm reminded, and this goes back a while, but I remember I went up and met with Richard Fisher at the time, Fisher Brothers in New York, big real estate company. And the Gettys had bailed them out in one of the downturns. And so the Fishers were always basically gave them 10% of every deal they saw and every deal they did. So this one was one when Perella left Morgan Stanley. He made 10 calls. He gave 10% to each family. Only one family was in the US. And so we got, you know, an allocation out of that. Not too different than, you know, what you know, Jacob Rothschild does in London with a number of special families there as well. So, you know, what's interesting is families have for quite a long time invested alongside of one another, back to Carol's point, with people they know. And what I'm seeing that's just interesting now is the deal flow and the access is very limited. And you know, I can think of, you know, a couple VC funds in the Valley where, you know, they went to school with Zuckerberg. And, you know, you get, if he's invested alongside it, they may not be the best entity. But, you know, if you have a name like that that's invested, it's hard for the competitor to get out of the gate. And so interesting times, but, you know, my experience of late, especially with younger first gen family members, we can do this ourselves. We don't need, you know, we don't need outsiders. So it's a lot of what you just said was like, how do you participate on the inside? I know I'm working with a group anyway, there's a lot, I think, that is going to be moving out of the Valley and looking for new homes in tax efficient locales. So technology may well be available a little elsewhere soon.
Yeah.
Okay, now I see next is Mariana. Are you there? Are you going to have to get your on mute off? Marianne, not Anna, sorry.
It's okay. So what's the question?
Oh, the question. Well, the question was really in terms of deal sourcing, but how do you get to really do deals when you haven't also known the people or can talk to them over a dinner or a boardroom or maybe just a walk in the park or whatever they can do these days?
Well, it's not easy. number one.
Or I guess I'm going to
But-
say this too, since California got to be masked on, I actually do have my mask ready to go in case, you know, Governor Newsom comes by. So we're ready in case he knocks on the door.
Well,
here. So,
It
I'm
looks
sitting in-
problematic, Gary.
yeah,
I'm sitting in Santa Fe, New Mexico right now. And so anytime you walk outside, you have to wear your mask. And
yeah.
I kind of understand because there are people that they just refuse it all. So there's the middle ground is kind of hard, right? That's a subjective versus objective type of exercise. But in regards to you know, in deals and how you do that without having a dinner or something along that nature, and I think that's where you really have to employ all your different relationships. You know, there are many of the, I was starting to say this in the last panel, that many of the institutional investors that kind of dug in their heels a little bit in 2020 and said, we're just not going to, we'll just, re-up on managers that we know. We're not going to go outside, afar, as it were, right?
Yeah.
Because I guess we all thought that it was all, because we were told, right, it was all going to be over. But of course, it didn't pan out that way, did it? Unfortunately for many people. But all that being said, I think that is where we have to work on all of our relationships, meaning those who know somebody else. It's like the fourth cousin, third removed, right? So, or the second cousin, one's removed, however you want to look at it. But I think we have to then go out in our networks and go outside of that. And I think that is, and there are folks out there that we have, that we can really leverage that. I mean, like today we've been on our LinkedIn, we've, because of this conference, and thank you, Marty, this is a way that you can leverage some relationships. Some of you, I don't know personally, but I know there's some people that we know that together, and that's what I'm talking about. Those are ways that you can do that without having a dinner. Although it is 4:46 here in Santa Fe, and I would love to have a glass of wine right here, and we can all enjoy that together, but.
Well, Alan Snyder is the expert on wine, but I actually wanted to ask the same question of Fred Nasm, since Fred actually is in New York City, or in the New York City area right now. And Fred has a fantastic group of co-investors that he's known for many years. So Fred, any perspective on, continuing to, stay warm with your contacts, and obviously, with a Juvenon and your capital raise, you're on both sides of this question.
Okay, maybe the best way for me to explain the way I do it, and I've done it. I ran 7 venture capital funds. 100 or 500 million dollars was a lot of money, and did very well with it. And decided at the end that I was really getting better deals when I was directly working on it or starting them as a founder. And I only have done disruptive deals over the years, nothing else. And the returns were really tremendously bigger, and the fund was a lot more. So that's the way I did it. I give you an example. I go to the source. I decided that's probably the best way for me to build sizable companies, billion-dollar size companies, that really, you may not get there, but you can start with very good pedigree. I just pulled about 3 people from the Bay Area, very, very well-known people, great investors, but also tremendous connection and what have you. They understand technology, they understand operations and what have you. We started, and I was one of the 3 first-round investors of an AI company, the like of which I've been going over AI. This is fantastic. It's natural language that is based on a specific, in other words, you do not need analytics in order to deploy AI. It's going to be for consumers. You can just right off the bat, you can have the software to go through everything you've got and tell you what you're missing or how you can really formulate your product better or new products. So no sooner we announced the 3 of us, we had a huge number of people wanted to come into the deals. Of course, when I know Carol, it's easy for me to pick up the phone. Sorry, Carol, I didn't pick up the phone. The thing just got away from me. But the bottom line is, it's fantastic. people are having a hard time, for instance, to hire AI. Today, I had a meeting with my management, and they had 1,000 people applied for their AR position. They got 3 PhD AI guys for nothing to just do summer intern. And they got some of the best, probably 2 of the top 10 AI advisors you can possibly hope. So it's that kind of quality deal that makes me very excited. Because when you start with that, a couple of things I learned. There is no substitute for great products. And there's also no substitute for great management. If you can marry it together, even if you go through some hell of a time, you get there. And that's really the theme that I invest in, both for my family office and in just the fun of starting companies. So that's where I am. In terms of networking, of course it makes sense. Like my network was these guys, I called them, and they made all the difference. And because they were involved, the deal got done about 7-8 days. We just, from the start to finish, it was no big deal. And because we know each other, we trust each other, we work with each other. So networking is very important, but also where you originate the deal, how you originate it, and how you stay involved with it. Marty was kind enough to invite me for various sessions for this Rejuvenant, and I went through a lot of things the last 4 years because it's a very important product to build. But it took some time, but there was faith there, and there was a management, and there was commitment that you can really make something happen. So that's the way I do it. And
so Fred, I also want to mention,
so far it's been.
I want to mention, Fred, also that, I mean, I've been lucky enough to meet some of the people that you invest in or invest with, and, you know, they all have fantastic pedigrees. I do want to mention that we had this women's GP panel earlier. They're all, you know, top business school graduates, right? So a lot of things
Right.
happen by chance, right? There's self-selection that happens, and then, you know, you keep on trying to see if it's that moment for that person.
But what one of the things that came out of that panel, I was very interested in it, was that when the woman in charge of the fund, the person who was the founder, is a woman, automatically they attract other women who could talk with them. So, you know, one of the biggest problems is to find talent that you want, and that it's a woman talent. But it was so interesting to know that women actually attract other women to it. I found out from this, and I usually do it in my companies that I have anything to do with them. And that is that I like to get to 50% women, 40-50% women ratio. Things work out so much better with mixed sexes as opposed to all the white men. It just doesn't work. I mean, the white men works too, but mixing it is much easier because there's certain sensibilities that they bring to the picture. We don't have it as men. And I just love the idea of it, but it's hard to get them. But you know, that panel was interesting, saying that, you know, if somebody is on top of this funnel, you really get other people to come on top of the funnel.
Agreed. Again, the point I want to make is that when you look back at your past and your history and the people that you're working with, you know, these people are really some of the best of the best.
Right.
And again, I've been lucky enough to meet your colleagues, and I know Carol for many years, and I'm sure her network is some of the best of the best. I know Alan Snyder. He's got a great group of colleagues that he works with. So I know Alan Reed a little bit as well. So you know, most of the people that we know aren't friends by accident.
Yeah, I think really what it comes down to is simply the same thing. I was just searching for a CEO for one of my successful companies. This is the next CEO to bring in. And the Renos asked me, what is it that you look for? I said, I look for 2 things. We learn how to be, everybody thinks and talks about reputation. Where it really counts is character. That's what I'm looking for. Reputation, you know, from the age of 13, 14, we get to know how to do our resumes and how to sell ourselves and all that stuff. That stuff is there, but that's just not what reality is. If somebody's got good character, is honest, has got integrity, has got humility, you get there with them. I'd like to invest in people like that. So that's very fundamental to me. I think in terms of relationship, when you do those kinds of things and you're good to it, there are some deals that don't work out quite the way you're thinking about, but you stay with it and you show the grit that is necessary. People then love you in long term. They become a part of your network. They say, look, I want to be with this guy, or I want to be doing things. I want to be with this in the foxhole together with this person or this group of people.
Absolutely. Sure. Gary, you had some other questions?
Yeah, so anybody else? I was going to kind of, because we've spent so much time on this. Unless anybody else wants to contribute on this, I'd like to change the focus of these when we talk about types of deals, direct, private, co-invest, syndicate, areas of focus, in industry geography or stage of investment, rather than detail what it is. I think it might be better if we just comment briefly on what's changed in the last, what has really the virus changed over the last year in terms of investing versus where you were before. And so why don't we go to Carol, because you've got so many first, and maybe you can tell me, you know, when you think about that, what's changed, or maybe what people may are asked to make changes even though they haven't completed those things.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. I would say, obviously, we've already talked a lot here today about the fact that you can't physically necessarily go and see a company even to go do due diligence. You can't go walk around the factory. Maybe somebody's holding up an iPad for you, but it's less likely that you could go and do a physical due diligence than you could before. And it's more likely, as we heard, which is absolutely my experience, that you're going to close deals with friends or people you've known for a long time. So you're not trying to bring in a new person if you're really going to put money on the table during COVID. I'll tell you about a deal that I have been involved with that has closed and is fantastic and was funded by family offices. It came to me through a family office. Very cool app started by a 40-year-old guy named Salona, who had been one of the Vimeo founders. And it's this app called Cluster, which helps people organize social impact events together, sort of organize their group, and then brings in brands to sponsor those groups, those events. Excuse me. So it's, oh, I'm so sorry. Actually, can someone else talk for a minute? I'm going to cough. Hold on.
Sure, let's switch over.
Yeah, so who's
Gary?
next? You want to go to Alan next? Only because, you know, he's been on here before, Alan Reed, or unless Alan Schneider wants to go.
Well, I'll go. I want to refine a little bit our positioning. You know, I guess I'm a prisoner of my past, having spent 5 years working with Kelso, KKR, and at Goldman. I brought the three of them together to do on their PE side. And I say with enormous respect for them, they have embodied deal flow that is legion. It is unbelievable. And it's easier to build the deal flow from those types of platforms. So Carol was talking about, and Gary, you asked changes. I see a lot of, and hear a lot of family offices say to me, oh, Alan, I want to do direct deals where we do the whole deal. And okay, maybe, what's the definition of the role that you're going to undertake? Not too many people have the experience of Fred or Alan to go do that, unless they're leveraging off the founding partner of the family office, his or her special expertise. Because frequently, family offices that are just entering the space, they're the last call on a deal that comes their way. So do they have a lot of deals to choose from? Maybe. Do they have the skill sets of Fred or Alan to go execute? And when I say skill sets, maybe again, once burned, twice shy, restructuring an $18 billion portfolio of high yield than when Drexel went under in my past. Do you have, if you're going to do it as a family office, okay, one person is fine that may have the expertise, but if the deal heads south for some reason, do you have the ability to restructure it, to handle a problem? As Fred said, to change the CEO and all the headaches that go with that. Because the Kelsos, KKR, and Goldman, they're enormous fee generators. So they will get the first call on any sizable deal. So I would say I would cautiously approach it. I see family offices get their who's this in the pickle slicer frequently on the lust to do direct deals where they're primary. And so I think that I'm a little cautionary on it. And then the other thing I see family offices do, which is good in one sense, they're leveraging the expertise of their original founder that has this broad network in whatever he or she did and created that huge value event, creating the family office. However, the corollary to that is, geez, are you really diversifying sufficiently? Yes, you may have the expertise and the network to do it, but are you diversifying the family office sufficiently away from, probably maybe a remaining position in the company that built all the wealth? So I see best be careful on some of the direct deals, because I've seen family offices get absolutely hammered when they have one person says, oh, let's go do direct private equity deals. And I'm not so sure they have the infrastructure to undertake it unless they bring something special to the party, like Fred or Alan do.
Okay, that's good comment. There's another Alan here, Alan Reed. Do you want to make a quick comment on that one?
Yeah, no, I think Alan nailed it. I mean, clearly, many family offices have no shortage of ego, and ego can be a challenge. So totally agree. Probably far more, well, like, especially in the VC space, far more train wrecks than upside. But the other side is that, there are opportunities there. They do see some opportunities. So, and my sense is that I'm seeing more, especially in the tech space. So, but nonetheless, I think that was really a good point. I do say the other side of the coin is we are seeing changes in family offices, right? So when you think about who's starting family offices these days, you got Stevie Cohen, with his own family office, David Rubenstein with his own family office. So my expectation is we start to see folks like that look to lead and bring deals. I will say that while totally agree that the big private equity shops see the deal flow, the big question is, do you get access to it? And do you, and is it diluted in so much that, you're also buying the, $100 billion deal that, there's very little upside in. So, and I just, I keep waiting now that he's gotten a pardon to see Mike Milken come back to the market. So, it's going to be interesting, but I think that people are going to do a lot more of what we're doing right now, and it's going to be interesting and probably more fluid.
Just a quick
Sorry, guys,
question.
I'd like to just,
I'm sorry.
Marty, can I,
Yep.
Marty, can I just
Yeah.
jump back in and finish my story, please? Sorry, I apologize. I don't have COVID. I got a dry throat. It's a little dry in here in the heat. So anyway, what I was starting to say before I was interrupted by my cough is that Cluster was founded by some of the founders of Vimeo. And it's an app that brings together brands that want to reach the millennial generations who are very focused on social impact and doing good and volunteering. And the brands come and sponsor these volunteering activities, and those are promoted by the big social media influencers, people that have 30 and 40 million followers. So it's incredible. It's a way to harness and organize this vast desire to volunteer, give back, and help that we see with younger people today in their 20s and younger, with brands that are taking, no longer going on television advertising and going into sponsoring socially good activities. The deal primarily got funded by a multi-billion-dollar family office out of Mexico, because the next gen son, whom I was mentoring, loved the deal. He's also very involved with the company, and they're planning to also bring the Cluster app into Mexico and into Spanish, because they have over 150 stores in Mexico and can do volunteering activities using the app for the kids to organize things in Mexico. And we have another partner that's probably going to bring it to Colombia. So that's an example where the young people were involved because of the crisis in the world, social impact, and helping others was top of mind for these people. And very large brands like Nike and Adobe and Glad trash bags and all these different people are sponsoring these events and top influencers are getting involved, promoting them as well. So it happened really, really easily, actually, but it was with a close group of friends. So I just wanted to finish out that story. I apologize for the coughing fit.
Perfect. That's interesting. I hope you feel better. Hey, Alan Reed. So I want to just get back to your earlier point, which I think, so as you said, family offices are a legend for being last investors in bad investments. And you can probably name, Quibi as one of them and several others, right? But is it rational to ask the question, why aren't there more traditional investors investing in this as well as family offices? Like, if you have something that's in a sector where it's well known that a certain VC invests in that or private equity firm invests in that space, you want to say, hey, did you go to that private equity firm or VC? What did they say? Right? And if they say, yeah, we went and they rejected us, I think it's fair to go and call up that PE firm or VC firm and say, why did you reject them? What was your thinking? Don't you think that makes sense from a process point of view?
A little bit of a loaded question there, Marty, right? Does it make sense? Yeah. Big question is whether you're talking VC or private equity, right? And looking at it, I am reminded, SoFi basically was started. Mike was sort of hoteling in one of my offices, dreaming this thing up, and and the family office got an allocation, so they were early. But clearly, it wasn't until they got some of the big institutional money, and it's that they really hit off. So I think that a lot of it. But let's go back to like VC. Look at Y Combinator, right? The reality has been the good deals get funded before anybody sees them. And that, I think, has been the challenge in tech, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, which wasn't that way in the .com. You needed big money, and today you don't necessarily need as big money to get started. So in the private equity space, absolutely. Private equity, if you're not doing a big deal, good luck to you. In other words, most of the private equity firms need size, and that kind of goes back to my early question about if you're a small, mid-sized company trying to get funding, the PE guys or the big ones are going to want you to be a lot bigger. So,
also, a lot of the companies nowadays don't want to have PE and VC funders. They're thought of as vulture capitalists. These guys are jerks. They take all your money and they try to bankrupt your company so they can buy it for cents on the dollar, literally. And so I know a ton of people that would never go near those firms, Marty, anymore, when they can go to the loving arms of a nice family office who will actually.
I think you mean the PE firms. I don't think any venture capitalists do that.
Are you kidding?
A different, yeah.
Are you kidding, Marty? You're telling me that you're being sarcastic, please.
With debt, right?
You must be being sarcastic.
You're tongue in cheek,
Marty. Just your friends, Marty.
Let me give.
That's not what I mean. I'm not saying that a VC may take an unfair amount of equity, but they're not looking to drive you into heavy debt. So they can.
Marty, can I throw a monkey wrench in this a little bit? We have been doing this family office, and we look for steady, hopefully return 5, 10, 15%, whatever. What happened with COVID and what is happening right now is that it really moved in a different world. I talked about it a little bit this morning in my call. But what is that? If you were not a part of what I call the tech architecture, the stack, and either a supplier or benefited by it, you really didn't have much to show in the last 10 or 15 years, okay? Mm-hmm. And you see, look at the S&P. There's like 5% of it is representing all the return. Mm-hmm. And what are they? These are the companies. So I think this is a very unusual opportunity for family offices to wake up and say, you know what? Do I want to get the same return over 15 years, or can I get it quickly if I do the right thing? Unfortunately, what Alan said is right, Alan Reed, about this knowing people and what have you in the tech area, particularly in Silicon Valley. But it's very important to find your way to that as a family office, not to be vultured, but basically, knowing what the trend is. So I think that if you didn't go IT in your company and you're an old guy, these are going to die on the vine or not have a lot of growth. I think that economy is going to move forward. The new economy is going to move forward through this. We saw it in healthcare, which is what I spend a lot of time on. I mean, what the innovation that's been made that came forward in the last 6 months is just huge. I mean, I think as a family office, you got to spend time on that and try to see if you can get into those, even if it's like.
Let me be positive on something that since I don't want to be negative Nelly here on the direct deals, even though Alan's chuckling about it, there are interesting niches for, I believe, family offices to play in, where the fact that they're not requiring, when I was at Morgan Stanley, Dean Witter, I would say to the teams of product people, if we couldn't put $1 billion to work, don't bother, because it was an army to feed. The family office has a unique advantage that they can act more quickly, generally, and they have smaller bite sizes. I think of two specific opportunities. One was a very large multi-billion-dollar CLO originator. When COVID hit, identified an opportunity to buy BB and BBB CLOs as the spreads were ridiculously wide. Now, it was not an institutional play. It was a play for family offices because they wanted to raise very quickly $100 million, which they did. And it was a natural, direct deal for a family office to play in my opinion. Now, we did, I mean, the denouement was, it was a 30% return for 2020. So maybe you got lucky. But it's the kind of place I think a family office brings an inherent advantage to the table. I'll give you another example. There's another money manager that has great expertise in off-the-run muni bonds. They have a unique, very special opportunity surrounding a deal that's complicated. I won't go into it out of Puerto Rico. They want to raise 50 to maybe 75. I think that's probably the appetite for the deal. And it's very similar to the contraction in spreads on the CLO. And I think it's a great place. Those deals really are opportunistic for a family office that doesn't want to go into some super huge fund, that wants to play in a quote unquote more direct sense. I think those were two deals that we've seen recently that I think build on the unique positioning of a family office.
So Alan, if I could follow up on that, because we've also got, for Marty, people interested in alternative investments, you know, the Bitcoin, the pot, whatever. Are you seeing some people that are now just sitting at home instead of going out to a nice dinner or whatever and reading about things going up like crazy, like the Bitcoin and others, and saying we want in, and are looking for those higher ones? Because obviously you have a pretty good risk-adjusted return in your area, but are these guys sort of saying, I want at least some of that? And then maybe the other panelists can say, what are they seeing in alternative investment? Some urgency to kind of catch up with the rest of the people that are the elite type guys that you see that are making tons and tons of billions every day?
Which Alan?
Yeah, why don't you do it since you're already on the screen, and then we'll follow up with the second Alan.
Well, yes, but being conservative, I think you have to be careful. I mean, I'm the dumb guy that we wrote a paper years ago about Bitcoin, how it was going to be very extremely powerful, and no accounting for taste. It got published a couple places. And I was too stupid at the time when Bitcoin was trading for nothing to play in Bitcoin itself. Instead, played on the VC, on the venture side, because I thought the underlying technology of Bitcoin was safer and a better place to play. Now it's worked out nicely. So I think there are lots of opportunities remaining in those areas of leveraging, you know, the Bitcoin ledger and all of that stuff. So Yeah, I think there's opportunity. Do I see family offices lust for high returns? Sure. Usually that's a recipe I've found for disaster, moths being drawn to the flame. So maybe I'm a bad one to ask.
Okay. How about you, Alan Reed?
Interesting. Because of my son's activity in the space, I've been on advisory board for Coin Circle and got actually, I guess he made me some money as well. So I tend to, the moths to the flame is a pretty good example. I'm not sure about family offices and necessarily, or those that we consider family offices. I will say that there's certainly a lot, especially on the West Coast, of tech folks that may have made money in an early IPO, and with their understanding of technology, put money into Bitcoin or some related token strategy. I don't know that. I mean, as unique as the family office space is, I would say the folks in the crypto space are even more unique. So I don't know that it's easy. What I will note though, Gary, is that you referred to it as an alternative. So I think that's a step up for crypto to be considered an alternative investment. So they're definitely making some movements there. I know Marty's been on this track for a long time, but in looking at it, I think there's a migration here. My thing I always go back to is, and this is why we created the liquid alts in 07, 08, was that an asset class has no value as a low correlative asset class if you can't rebalance. And the challenge to me is whether you're talking about hedge funds that, and the point back then was that all the hedge funds got gated and the families got locked out. But whether it's private equity or whether it's a hedge fund or whether it's an alternative, if you don't have a mechanism that you can rebalance at a time, that low correlative benefit has just disappeared. So it's all about, in my mind, going back to, Harry Markowitz used to remind me, he goes, I don't know about all that crazy stuff you guys are creating. I do 50-50, 50 treasuries, 50 S&P index. That's what I'm talking about. And, I sort of ate my words in 99 and 2000 as the .com thing blew up, and Harry did just fine with his allocation. But his point was, can you rebalance, and are those real markets?
Okay, so I'm going to go back to Carol, because when we had our call on Friday, she says no to Bitcoin, yes to pot, which I think she's talking about not pot for herself, but for her investors. And this is not smoking it or saying they smoked it like Senator
Guys,
Harris.
we've got 10 minutes left, so.
Yeah. Okay, so go ahead, Carol. Tell us about the pot, what pot you're in.
No, I mean, I'm on the advisory board of a cannabis company in Canada. That's been a wild ride, certainly in Canada. But I do think that this will be the year that cannabis is legalized federally. Why? Because we have massive deficits and nobody is opposed to taxing cannabis. New York's definitely going to go legal this year. So the thing that will be interesting is to see if all these small companies will just get rolled up into RJR Reynolds, who can quickly switch over and start growing cannabis pot plants rather than tobacco plants. But I think that's, it's sort of like investing in alcohol. It's the next alcohol and it's widely accepted and it's going to go legal this year. So certainly that's an area where there's good money to be made, and it'll be interesting to see the various vehicles that come out.
Carol, I need a date. Do you think it'll be legalized in the first half of the year or second half of the year?
Probably second half. I mean, God knows we'd all prefer to have cannabis while we're stuck at home. Legally delivered by our DoorDash drivers, but I don't know if Biden will get to that. But it's the obvious way for the federal government to start getting some revenue to combat this massive deficit we're facing. So, but I think this is probably the year we finally get it done.
Well, here in Los Altos Hills, Carol, there's a lot of people who have private vineyards on their 1 acre, 2 or 3 acre lot, and so I guess I'm going to take a outlook here about seeing who's going to pull out those vines and start growing the weed. So we'll see. Though I think there'll be a lot of theft in here for that. But I do think maybe somebody can comment on this because it got touched in the last one. You know, Bitcoin, whoever invented Bitcoin, obviously seeded with a whole bunch of coins, and they made all the initial mining profits. So that one of the panels, they talked about the US Treasury is actually thinking about that. So, why not a US government-backed Bitcoin? I think Iceland was talking about that at one time, and I think Marty had that presentation in here,
So-
maybe in
Oh, no,
one
he's,
of his. And I thought it would be a good deal. And I'm going to get a little political, saying that why don't you call it an Obama coin, and then Biden will say every good Democrat has got to buy an Obama coin. Maybe you'll get to put a decal on your car, or wear a badge or something. But it seems like there's a extreme amount of money to be made in something that's government backed. And like I said, you'll grab some mining yourself because there's going to be deficits on steroids. I don't know. Is that something that might come in? Not necessarily
Actually,
what its name is going to be.
that was one of my questions was, how is the instability of the government right now, this kind of constitutional crisis, plus, this currency debasement, how are family offices reacting to that in terms of their activation? And I'll give a perspective. So we had Paul Stevens on, who was one of the ran Robertson Stevens. He came on like around 2010, 2011. He said, he spoke to our San Francisco crowd. He says, there's too much money printing, currency debasement. I'm totally against it. I'm getting out of the stock market, and I'm buying walnut farms all over California. So he became like, he cornered walnut farms. He says, and then also my kids are into something called Bitcoin. So I decided to buy a Bitcoin mining company for them, right? I'm funding one. And Bitcoin was, I think, $10 at that point in time. I mean, I think, and everybody knows Bart and Brad Stevens from Blockchain Capital. I mean, it was very savant. And I'm wondering if there's any family office moves right now who are kind of like saying, who are going against the current.
Well, I would say that two things family offices are doing, and then Alan Reed, I know you have something to add here. One is everybody's beefing up their gold deposits a little bit more, their physical gold. And two, those that don't have them are getting second passports and really having escape routes to be able to literally flee the country. If I want to flee the country in 24 hours, can I? And how would I do it? And so people are getting a lot more serious because I work a lot with Kroll. They're getting a lot more serious about having an economic watchtower, and you can hire people like Kroll to do this for you, put together a bunch of data points that they're going to watch for you. And when, there's a certain amount of political unrest and this happens and this happens, and this happens, okay, load up the plane or charter the plane and we're out. But we have another passport, we have a safe place set up, and we have gold coins that we can go get to. So, I mean, that's a much more practical way to do it.
Carol just hit on a lot of really important things. I'm just going to go back quickly to Gary and then try to remember all those points. But just a reminder, it was actually the UK, a little country some of us may know. Bank of England 2 years ago was working and testing tokenization. So I do think that that's the future. I think this data point here about clearly there's huge taxes we're going to need to change, and also let's think about it. It's, contrary to what people believe, on the blockchain, there's a permanent record of every transaction. Mm-hmm. So if you want to get rid of the black market, it's get rid of the paper money, get rid of gold and diamonds, and tokenize everything. So there's a good case to make there. I did just want to jump on, what Carol was talking about there. A good friend of mine's after a liquidity transaction in Europe, I don't know, 10 years ago, father was kidnapped, and I think they paid the second highest ransom ever paid. And I mean, given what we've seen of late, and given having put people pressed, I think that as he said, has anybody ever lost their dog? Has anybody had their dog held for ransom? How would you like that to be your parent? And looking at it, I think that families, it's just, I know it's not on topic, Marty, sorry, but I do think that this is the kind of world and kind of the challenge that wealthy individuals really need to take seriously.
Mhm. And I think a lot of people just were in shock, total shock that they couldn't fly out of the country. Even if you had a private plane, there are a lot of places you could not go. And I think that pulled up a lot of people's shirt and said, wait a minute, even though I have a plane, I can't leave. What the hell does that mean? So anybody who's got half a brain should be preparing for the next pandemic, which will be worse than this pandemic and will be less than 10 years from now, in my opinion. And so you better have your second place organized, and you better have Kroll or somebody on staff who tells you, or pay attention when they're starting about a new virus somewhere, and get ready to fuel up the jet and get to wherever, your own private island. Some people I know are buying more private islands, a little tax-friendly haven like Cyprus or Malta. I mean, where are you going to go? You have to get really practical, buy a place, and be able to get on a plane and get the heck out of Dodge, because that's going to be necessary in the future, I believe.
There's a
let me
lot of
ask you-
dialogue about that in Wyoming with sort of compounds that, for multifamily groups,
So Alan, you're a pretty astute guy, and maybe this is
Guys,
okay
I got
there.
about 3 minutes left.
Okay, I'm going to ask this one question. So one of my Harvard Business School colleagues, I write the class notes for my class, says, remember Dr. Zhivago. So Dr. Zhivago, Yuri Zhivago, comes back after fighting on the front lines in World War I there, and the Bolsheviks have taken over his house. They said it belongs to the people. Now, they did that in Tacoma. They're doing it in other places for, abandoned houses and everything. But at some point in time, do people feel like they need an escape? Now, Sergey Brin lives just down the street, at least he used to before his wife gave him the heave-ho, and he has this massive, like 40-foot bunker that he built, in terms of an escape bunker. Now, maybe only his wife needs it now, but they got 2 Siberian Huskies patrolling it. Maybe that's all they need. But do you think that people in the family offices are worried about having a safe place to go to, or is that just in a few select cities that are kind of been radicalized?
Are you kidding? This country has the largest private gun ownership of any country in the world. There's so many gun-toting crazies who are poor running around this country. And believe me, kidnap for a fee is going to become much more popular. You don't want your escape hatch in the United States because we have too many guns in private hands. You need to go to another country or a private island where there aren't so much personal gun ownership, because those guns can be trained on you and your family, kill your guards at the front gate, hop over your gates, and then you're screwed. You have to go somewhere without so
many people
guns.
over the last 10 years have moved to the United States. Lots of super wealthy people.
Yeah, and that's why they're all leaving now. If you read the Forbes and the Journal, there's this huge exodus of wealthy people getting second passports so they can leave the United States because of all the guns here.
But they still live here.
No, but they're ready. They have a second passport so they can leave if the economy goes down and things get destabilized.
I think lots of people have second passports.
All about diversification, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, being able to
I was
go
hoping to
wherever
end on
it's
a better
safer.
note about what people are actually investing in right now. So if we can spend 20 seconds on top things to invest in besides cannabis and second passports, that would be great.
I'll just add one thing. May I? More as a question to those who know more about basically crypto. Is a good way to play it. I know about a dozen companies that have their own coins, and when SEC approves the road, or things become a little bit easier to deal with, all of those coins could be coming to the market. Is that a good way to go about reserving your approach to this area? Is it good to own them?
I don't know anyone else. I think we had the expert on earlier. My sense is that, there's a lot of change coming still, and government interaction will probably, has already created some losers, right? And so custody is going to be a big issue, how they work that out, what the mandates are. Obviously taxes are another, but clearly, I think there's an opportunity there, but you also, go back to the Levi Strauss, if you think about it, find ways to buy, find somebody selling picks and axes.
Hey, Alan Reed, and outside of picks and axes, guns, second passports, and cannabis. Can you in 10 seconds or less just say your two hottest sectors for 2021 and why, and for family offices to be in?
I'll start with one anyway. I think a big one is voice. And I mentioned Zamo, which is local. Basically, they're aggregating. Think about Siri, think about Alexa, think about, so they're basically aggregating all of that. But what's interesting is when you start thinking about voice is that with new technology and 5G and the rest, you'll be able to basically ask your phone a question and get an immediate answer. So why do you need a screen anymore? Talk about democratization, access to information. So I think that what we're going to see is more and more access to data via voice. So I'll throw that out there.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll give one too. Municipal bond niches will be powerful as the Dems have control. There will be money given back to the states. So that will further strengthen. So you want to look at niche municipal bond areas. And two, taking a page from Carol, I don't know if she'll agree with me. Again, being the conservative one of the group, there are some places of lending to cannabis players against their real estate and some of their growing farms, which is maybe a very conservative way to play the cannabis explosion that Carol's predicting.
Yeah,
because it's very hard for lenders to play with cannabis companies because there's all sorts of regulatory issues.
If there's some great cannabis lenders with fantastic returns, Alan, so you're right. And all the lenders I've spoken to are actually predicting that federalization will lead to absolute cannabis carnage and not the other direction, right? So, right, because once there's no more barriers. So federalization
there'll be a massive expansion of the market, and of course the weak guys will either go out of business and got gobbled up.
Right.
Just like any industry, there'll be industry, a fragmented industry will consolidate. It's totally normal.
Yep.
Okay.
I would say another.
Alan, my other question, Alan Snyder.
Anyway,
is we had a, I'm not sure who's logged on here making noise, but we had a $4 trillion deficit in 2020. Is it going to be the same in 2021?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We have universal agreement.
So, and there's a risk of inflation. So be very careful.
Yeah, no kidding.
Okay.
Well, before you wrap up, Marty.
For a second. You know, one thing I'd like to remind, for me, I think it's helpful to remember is that back in 99 and 2000, we all knew that dot-coms were like overdone, but everyone threw in, the towel and just jumped in because it was like, how many years are you going to fight the market? And in 07 and 06 and 07, we all knew that it was like, how can these banks be lending and not wanting to know how much I make, or what my net worth is? My point is only, I think that we basically have gotten to a point where we actually have the information, we have the knowledge, we just don't have the patience. And it's, as these markets are like ballooning, people just jump in blindly. And this is the time when people get whipsawed. So I think that a lot of what we've heard today makes a lot of sense. And the challenge is not going with the temptation to buy, pets.com.
Alan, what do you do with, the car companies? They're just very popular. Tesla. What do you do with Tesla?
I love Tesla. I've got two, and I've got two batteries, and I've been selling my position in Tesla, shaving it down ever since it hit 400. So, again, exuberance, right? I mean, I love this. I love the company, but really,
I think Elon Musk captures a lot of people's imagination. I mean, there is people are not, they don't separate the person from the company. I mean, he's like Steve Jobs that way, right? So,
yeah. So I would say to all Virgin Galactic. If you don't like it here on Earth, blast into space and don't, you won't have to come back. You won't have to make any decisions. And hopefully your Bitcoin is negotiable up there. But Marty, we have to do a panel review. I have the review here. I'm gonna give you my A. Thanks to Azure, Microsoft Azure gave me a couple of these cups. So I think we had a hell of a panel. This interactive one may be better than the other ones, and it turned out to be okay. Now Mario just sent me a note. Our Swiss Family Office guy. It turns out that he lost his password to his Bitcoin wallet, so that's why he didn't join. But other than that, let's give everybody a hand and a letter grade. It's great.
Great job, guys. Thanks so much.
Good to see everybody.
So once again, thank you so much for coming. Our next event is in February in Boston. Probably the best way to measure the time it's going to take is Trump will be impeached again.
He already has been impeached again, Marty. It happened today while you were on the panel.
All right. Thanks so much for making it, and we'll see you later. Cheers.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
That was fun. Good to meet everybody. Well.
Take care.